Where did David flee to after leaving Nob, and what did he do there? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 1 Samuel on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 1 Samuel chapter 21, verses 10 to 15, but before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to 1 Samuel chapter 21, verse 10. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry, just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 1 Samuel chapter 21, beginning verse 10. Then David arose and fled that day from before Saul, and went to Achish, the king of Gath. And the servants of Achish said to him, Is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing of him to one another in dances, saying, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? Now David took these words to heart, and was very much afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. So he changed his behavior before them, pretended madness in their hands, scratched on the doors of the gates, and let his saliva fall down on his beard. Then Achish said to his servants, Look, you see that the man is insane. Why have you brought him to me? Have I need of madmen, that you have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? In our last lesson, we looked at David fleeing from Saul and coming to Nob. He received showbread from the priests of the tabernacle, something we said was not sinful because of the principle that God desires mercy and not sacrifice. And so, since this was the only way for the priest to be merciful to David and his men and not allow them to starve, the giving of the showbread in this instance would be acceptable, even if in other situations it wouldn't. Doeg, a servant of Saul, though, saw the entire event, something that will have huge consequences, the Lord willing, in the next chapter. For now, though, David flees from Nob to Gath. If Nob is located near Jerusalem, then according to our map, David probably fled west-southwest on the road that leads to Bethshemesh. He would then have turned south towards Azekah and then west to Gath. Think how desperate David must have been in order to flee from one tyrant and come and seek refuge in the city of the man that he had killed a few years before, Goliath. This was an exceptionally dangerous move on David's part, as we'll see in just a few moments. The king of Gath, or more accurately the lord or ruler of Gath, was a man named Achish. In Psalms 34, which is David's psalm concerning this event, Achish is referred to as Abimelech. If you recall back to Genesis 20, we said that Abimelech could easily have been the title of the rulers in this region, like Pharaoh is the title of the king of Egypt, thus explaining why David would refer to Achish as Abimelech in that psalm. David's intention when coming to Gath is to seek refuge there from Saul. But of course, the problem is the people there knew who David was. No, they might not have known of him as the man who killed Goliath, for David probably would have looked older by then and might have had a beard. But they did know him from the songs and dances sung about him in Israel, namely that Saul had killed his thousands and David his 10,000s. Moreover, David had been in Saul's army fighting the Philistines after the defeat of Goliath, and so that the Philistines knew of David should not surprise us. David is referred to as king, but we should not take that to mean that the Philistines regarded David as king of Israel instead of Saul. For the same Hebrew word is applied to David that was applied to Achish, meaning that the Philistines regarded David as someone of high rank, a great man in Israel. Now, why would Achish have even thought about taking David in? Well, perhaps politically, if David was on his side, then he could provide a way to defeat Saul in battle. Or perhaps David could be held as a prisoner and offered to be let go in exchange for something of value to Achish. Any sort of reason could be given as to why Achish might take David in, something that David perceived when he found out that they knew who he was. Because of fear of King Achish, David pretended to be mad or insane by scratching at the doors of the gate and frothing at the mouth. Some commentators say that certain manuscripts imply that David actually went mad here at the situation, but that would go against the general tenor of the narrative, as David is not seen as mad at the beginning of chapter 22, which occurs immediately after this story. How would David know how to look mad? All we have to know is that he played the harp to soothe Saul when the distressing spirit came upon him. So perhaps that is somewhat how Saul behaved. We do not know specifically, but what we do know is that King Achish and his servants thought he was mad and did not want to have anything to do with him, so they sent him away. Before closing, we have to ask, did David deceive and lie to Achish? And the answer is, not by his words, but he did by his actions. Nowhere in the text is any comment made about the righteousness of David's actions. In fact, we find that he did what he did out of fear, much like Abraham lied to Abimelech about Sarah being his wife, out of fear, thinking Abimelech would take her and kill him. Doing things out of fear often will lead us to do things that are sinful. David trusted in the Lord for safety, yes, but it appears in this instance the circumstances got the best of him, and so for a moment he acted out of fear and deceived Achish. Some try to excuse David's actions here, but I cannot in good faith do so. God didn't say it was righteous in any way. He just presented us with the facts. He does tell us that lying is sinful, and so that is something we should take to heart in our daily lives. Where did David go after this? We'll find that out, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Samuel chapter 22, verses 1 to 5, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.